Muchachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. One time had by all. I'm Petey Rave, and I'm here with my triumvirate, my team, my squad. We've got David Majors, aka DJM.
Buenos tacos, muchachos, and remember, some teeth are naturally genetically yellow, so don't let it get to you.
Yeah. And all the way at the end, we have Drew Snyder.
Is that a corgi on your mic?
Yeah, a little corgi cable management guy. I have to get it on.
That's the associate producer of the Record Breakers podcast.
Yeah, it's a little like...
I just noticed it for some reason.
I got a 2-pack of them at Daiso in Korea, and they're for like putting at the end of like at where your like charging cable connects to your phone or something to like protect it from bending. So it's like, and then it just kind of sits there by your phone.
Did you give it a name?
I haven't thought of one, but I'll have to give it some consideration. It's a little cute little guy. But yeah, let's talk about music. Let's talk about speaking of puppies. Let's talk about the album that we're talking about this week. It's going to be provided by Drew. Drew, what have you got for us this week?
Well, this is a band I found thanks to, oddly enough, headphone forums back in the day. And I'll explain a little bit more of that later. But they're a jazz fusion group from Denton, Texas. Shout out Denton and the person we know from that area. The singular person we know from that area. Yeah. But I wanted to bring them up because their keyboard player lost a year-long medical fight after a stroke last year. And I was surprised that I had never brought them up before because they're one of my favorite jazz groups. This is Snarky Puppy. The album is called groundUP.
David, what was your mindset going into this album? What were your expectations coming into this album?
I have a slight familiarity with Snarky Puppy. I've listened to them off and on in passing for several years. I know I've definitely had them in the background at my desktop or when I was doing chores or what have you. They are a great type of band for that, where you don't totally put them in the background. They're just enough to keep you engaged, but they're still very, very vibey. In a lot of ways, Snarky Puppy is really up my alley, and I was really looking forward to diving into one of their albums in earnest because they have a lot of things that I really like that are very, very similar to a lot of bands that I really enjoy and have brought on this podcast on several occasions. The key being really high-level play and musicianship, but still never forgetting that the hook matters, because it does. And I was really looking forward to checking out a Snarky Puppy album in full because they are very eclectic, they are very talented, and they are consistently pretty enjoyable. One more thing.
Yes.
Just from my world of things, the band that I've always closely compared them to in the back of my mind is Thank You, Scientist, and I'm probably going to bring that up later.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't have like 100% of an idea of what to expect. I wasn't somebody that actively listened to Snarky Puppy. I'm sure at some points when people were saying Snarky Puppy, I probably in my mind at least once or twice accidentally thought people were talking about Skinny Puppy, which is a completely different band.
Yep. Completely different.
Oh, very different.
Which also, by the way, if you go to Skinny Puppy's Wikipedia, it says not to be confused with Snarky Puppy. which is
Same with
fantastic.
Snarky
And
Puppy's
same with Snarky
Wikipedia
Puppy.
pitch.
Definitely not to be confused with either one. But I was
Maybe they should go on tour.
That'd be cool.
That would be so dope. It would be weird, but knowing Mike, it would be super in his wheelhouse.
Yeah. But yeah, the I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. I know that this is a band that was liked by the musicians of our gang. I'm pretty sure multiple of you guys, I'm sure Swag has talked about them before, and I imagine this is something Squiggles has some at least passing knowledge of, if not familiar with. So I was intrigued to see what to dive into, what we finally kind of get into an actual full album and full experience. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, as David said, the vibe itself is like a big part of it. Michael Leake, as I said, Mike earlier, the band leader, the bassist, a strong groove throughout is going to be important, of course. Having your band leader be a drummer or a bassist, keeping the groove like smoothly in the pocket is going to be very, very important to them, because that's kind of how the brain works at that point. But also the varied instrumentation that they have always had. They work with and have like shared the stage with a weird grouping of people. Like if you look at the performed with section of their Wikipedia, you have Erykah Badu, Marcus Miller, David Crosby, Snoop Dogg, and the 1975. It's a mix, and that is on purpose. Michael has described them as a instrumental pop band, and you get bits of like pop and hip hop and those sorts of elements in the music, which is really, really cool and makes it a lot more approachable. But the way it's always been mixed and the way it's constructed and thought out has always let everybody shine very, very clearly when it is their time to shine, but never leaves them out of it for too long. The reason I like groundUP a lot is from beginning to end, I sometimes associate my instrumental music with movies or TV scores. And this is, I could imagine myself as Kojak or James Bond just driving a cool car after catching the baddie with a woman driving down the coast in an E-type Jag. Yeah, caught the baddie, got a baddie, driving down the Italian coast in an E-type Jag with a lot of this music. But yeah, there's an element of you can put it on the background, and every so often you're going to be sucked back into it. Like, oh, geez, what are they doing? And that, I think, is kind of the brilliance of this record.
Mm-hmm. David, how would you describe this album musically?
Truth be told, Snarky Puppy, according to their wiki, says that they are a pop band that improvises a lot without vocals. I've never really agreed with that. I've always called Snarky Puppy a jazz fusion band that doesn't get lost in the sauce. They always know how to come back to their foundation, even though they weave their way through everything from jazz to pop to fusion to a little bit of psychedelia to a little bit of country, and they weave their way through, but it's still all a very distinct sound, and they're very, very good at that. And I think that if you enjoy jazz fusion, or if you have an appreciation for musicians that don't really have any kind of restrictions, this will be the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is definitely like, this was very, very jazz fusion, very like, fusion, very creative, very like, it brings a lot of like fun grooves, a lot of fun, instrumentation. With this kind of genre, I'm like, above all else, I'm like I'm like the most lost when it comes to knowing what like the right verbiage or how to express how it is, but um it's nice. It's performed really well. It's like there's a lot of really fun stuff that with the different like keyboards and like the horn sections that there's it goes a lot of fun like different places. Some of the longer tracks kind of like have like their own like movements within them. It's also really cool. Like uh it's I guess it's probably like an you can call it an affectation, but I think it's neat that it's recorded live in front of a studio audience like an old jazz album would be. Like, this before recordings were just recordings of performances, not something you went in specifically to do. So it's like, a little bit like doing it kind of like a classic way in that way, and it creates for fun little moments throughout the album, which I think adds to the personality and the vibe of the album as well. So it is really tight, solid instrumentation, like with mixes of genres, but mainly like just a solid jazz fusion foundation. But yeah, let's get into the key tracks. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
For me, oh god damn it, Bob. For me, Thing of Gold.
I missed that track.
Thing of Gold, the light keys, the rise of the horn into it, the tone of the drums, like the way that all like those first 3 minutes of that song, especially like usher you into the record, I think is really great. When I'm picking out like the hip hop feeling, the last 3 minutes of Binky like clicked in my head almost immediately. Like it's a part where I'm like, oh man, I wish like some rapper would use this as a sample somewhere. And if they have, somebody please let me know. And then when I said I heard them because of headphone forums, the video for Young Stuff was recorded during the like 2 or 3 nights that they recorded this album over. And the entire like gimmick is, well, they're recording it, so they're not going to play it live in the room. Everybody had a pair of headphones. They brought whatever headphones and they plugged into like a splitter. Everybody had a headphone feed and all of the band had a headphone feed. So like there was just a game of, can you spot all the headphones? Because there was Sennheisers, there was Bear Dynamics, there was Grados, there was a pair of Beats somewhere in there. Like it was all
that guy got thrown out.
I'm pretty sure that guy was in the band.
My point stands.
Yeah.
But it was the first song that I had heard from them, so it's always going to have a special place in my heart. But there is also in that, one, the bass tone I think is awesome in that song, and two, there is a keyboard solo that just completely rips 2 minutes in out of fucking nowhere, just and just goes, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I'm going to highlight the second track, Bent Nails. The opening 2 minutes and 26 seconds of this song is relentless. It is up-tempo. It is really intricate, but at the same time, it swings. And I absolutely loved it. Bent Nails, in the best, most complimentary way, is a music nerd song. They were really cooking on that track. There were a lot of moments on this album that actually started with Thing of Gold. Throughout the album, there were a lot of moments, and I'm going to talk about that later in my conclusive thoughts, but I feel like literally every track had a moment or a section or a movement that was really, really fun and really, really good, whether it was they were really just playing some really tight jazz or they were delving off into some country rock sort of vibes, or into their kind of psychedelic vibes. Everything was really enjoyable and had moments, but ... And I'm going to get into that in my conclusive thoughts.
Yeah, I would say like what's been said before, like those tracks are good. I loved I do enjoy also the name Binky. Like it's just a fun name for a track, but Binky goes a lot of fun places. Obviously Thinking Gold, like Drew said, and starts off and really kind of tells you a lot about the album. But yeah, Binky kind of goes a lot of fun places throughout. It's like 9 minutes, and I also enjoyed Quartermaster, especially for like the ending, which is the them talking at the end and just talking about how Sean Martin, the late Sean Martin, was just literally on the piano. Apparently, it's just like so. It's like it tells you a lot about like the personality and the kind of the fun that they were they're having with their music, where they just kind of physically felt it and just was just having fun even while recording, which is really cool. Let's bring it back around the horn. Talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Gentlemen, given that we're all fans of sport, particularly basketball, we're all familiar with the play-by-play announcer Mike Breen, right?
I might be, but maybe by voice, but not off the top of my head.
Okay.
You know who was announcing the 2016 finals, right? I'm just putting that out there. I'm familiar.
To that point, he has a signature call when somebody hits a big shot. He goes, bang! Sometimes twice.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Thank You Scientist earlier as a close comparison to Snarky Puppy, and I figured out the it factor, the defining factor between those two bands. Snarky Puppy, at their core, is not a rock band. Snarky Puppy and Thank You Scientist do a lot of similar things. But Thank You Scientist has that sprinkle of heavy rock and metal. They have something that Snarky Puppy doesn't, and it's that big percussive boom that a lot of times on this album I was waiting for. There were a lot of moments and transitions and build-ups on this album that built up a lot of tension and excitement, but then there was no payoff for me. There was no real punch to bring things home a lot of times, and it kept reminding me, oh yeah, these guys are kind of a chill jazz band. They don't really go that hard, if you know what I mean. And that's kind of where they lost me, because one too many times there were moments that built up that didn't really pay off. And I enjoyed a lot of this, but I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. It just felt like something that should have had a little bit more, but it didn't. I liked how the songs were composed and played. It just felt like way too many times there was very little payoff before going to the next movement or the next segment. It was The entire album is extremely well played, extremely well arranged, and I would absolutely listen to this again, and I will listen to Snarky Puppy from here on out. But they're probably not going to be very high on my list. This might sound weird, but they kind of ended up in the same place as Lenny Kravitz, who we just talked about not that long ago. They're great as relaxing background music or music to put on while you're doing other things. But, and I don't mean this to be mean, they don't rock in the classic sense. And it felt like a lot of times there was just something missing.
Yeah, I could definitely hear that. Like, for me, it was definitely the vibe of just in like pleasant, nice, fun, and like music that I could have on while I was doing something like right here on my computer, and I could also be paying attention to it while it's like maybe like my fingers are busy on something else. Uh, but there was still, you know, fun things to kind of like pick in and pick out of it and enjoy along the way. Um, it Yeah, I can definitely agree that there wasn't a big impact moment, um, but it's definitely uh, an enjoyable album, an enjoyable kind of like cool, chill jazz fusion album of like musicians just chilling out, having a little fun, jamming out some tunes. And I think that that's kind of where it is. It's good. It's good. It's nice. And it works well. Um, but yeah. Drew. Last but not least, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Well, one, we've said it, but I want not put too fine a point on it, but I don't know what the band does next without Sean. I feel like if there's two members, because Michael League has always sort of considered the band a collective, not necessarily a band, because people come and go. But the two mainstays that I felt made the sound what it was at its best is Michael League and Sean Martin. Sean Martin's synth / keyboard work, I think, was impeccable. So, tough shoes to fill for whoever comes next, for sure. And not saying it can't be done, but sometimes it has to be a little different. So I'm hopeful because Michael League's a smart guy, and he's a nice guy, so he probably can find somebody. But that being said, this album and this band is one of those bands that I think is the Zelda of jazz to me. And what I mean by that is that Zelda has always been described as the game that's very easy to figure out, but to really master it and really dive deep takes a lot. And that's why you have people who don't game a whole lot that can pick up Zelda and figure it out. And you have people who've played video games for years that hinge on every new Zelda release and still find things to go back to and still find things to like dive and get their hands dirty with. And that I think is Snarky Puppy. I think that even people who aren't super well versed in jazz or fusion jazz or what have you, or even don't like instrumental music, I think can find something in Snarky Puppy. And they've worked with singers before, like I said, Michael McDonald, David Crosby, Erykah Badu. They've worked with singers. They have songs with vocals out there, but I think it's approachable and I think it's fun. But I also think there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, those are our thoughts on Snarky Puppy's ground up. Now we get to the main events of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, uh, where we or haiku reviews, where we sum it all up with the 575, the poetic form, get all poetic on you, get your poetry on. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno. David, what is your haiku?
Jazzy jams with swing, with sprinkles of country rock. It's good, but no punch.
My haiku. Jazz fusion AF with a bunch of fun details. The vibes are just right. And last but not least, Drew, what is your haiku? Are you muted?
You are muted, Mr. Cipher.
All around greatness from some incredible musicians who are also nice.
Yeah, those are our thoughts on Snarky Puppy's Ground Up, which you can, of course, find on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game, do your due diligence and your due diligence. Play along at home. We have a Spotify playlist and a YouTube playlist, which you can find on our website, recordbreakers.fun as well. On those playlists will be next week's record, and it's provided by me. And I've got, I'm bringing it back, kind of probably doing another back and forth. A couple albums ago, we did South Florida. As somebody speeds off the distance. A couple albums we did South Florida last time we did South Korea. Now we're gonna go back to South Florida. Another Miami band, another local band that has some buzz about them. We're gonna talk about Las Nubes and their album Tormentas Malsanas. So look forward to that. But that'll be next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us.
PD, I'm just going to tell you right now, I had no expectations coming into this album. I have no idea what it is.
You can find us all over the internet at recordbreakers.fun for all of our episodes and show notes. Check out all the details there. Find us on YouTube at Rebelli TV. If you're over there on YouTube, come find us on Twitch at Rebelli TV. You can watch us live with a number of things, including this podcast, Through the Tomes, our TTRPG real play show, and of course our weekly playthrough of WWE 2K24 My GM under the Fanny Pack Wrestling banner. That's a lot of fun times there. It's mainly just a podcast with me, Drew, and our buddy me, David, Drew, and our buddy Kaz, just talking about life and wrestling and things like that. While we play my GM. Yeah, check out all the things. Like, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Annyeong.
Annyeong.
Fighting.
Fighting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Crying nut.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.